Right, good afternoon. It is Tuesday, May 26th. It's 4:37 p.m. and we will call to order the Policy Committee meeting of West Bend Joint School District Number 1. Next on our agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Let's rise and recite the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we have several discussion items on our agenda tonight. First is committee organization. Superintendent Wimmer, will you walk us through that item?
Sure. So this is the first formal meeting of the committee following technically the newly seated board members. So each of you is a returning member. Mr. Swigert has expressed interest in continuing to chair the committee. And Mr. Jenkins and I were talking about we have faced this ourselves, but in the issue of an absence, having a vice chair who can be called upon to chair the meeting in the absence of the chair. So we really need to discuss kind of how you want to continue those roles, and then I'll go through the next part for you.
Well, I think the idea of a vice chair is a fine idea, so I'd be supportive of that. Other thoughts?
I would say that's pretty standard in other governmental bodies that I'm affiliated with, so.
Okay. Any objection, committee members? Joe?
None here. I think that's a fine idea, and I won't arm wrestle him for it.
I was going to say, because,
Thanks,
we
Joe.
could yank him right out of the chair.
All right.
Great, then we'll let him continue in that role and name Chris as Jenkins as the vice chair. And I've also talked with the curriculum committee around moving in that same direction as well for themselves. Now, we have met historically Tuesdays, 4 to 6 p.m., and we went with a quarterly meeting schedule, and then we just cancel if the work is attended to and staying on schedule. So that puts us as that. Is there any discussion? We've also met on Tuesdays. Any issue with continuing on Tuesdays, 4 to 6 in a quarterly fashion based upon your availability?
I think that's fine.
Seeing none, then I'll kind of lay in when those would fall and then just do a double check on your availability. And then the policies that are slated for review, you can see this is what we kind of reset and have a cycle of review. So you can see us, we've already attended to the 800 and 900 this year. We're launching into the 300. Next year, we would pick up the 100, 400, and 500 series. Again, a quarterly meeting allows us to then be attentive to new requirements, new policies. We'll be talking about one such instance tonight, but I'll continue that cycle of renewal unless you would like something different.
I think that's fine. Committee members, other suggestions? No issues on my side. Okay, hearing none.
Again, we still have space to take up anything new that we need to, so I will draft a few dates based on those quarterly meetings for 4 o'clock on Tuesdays, and then I'll send them to you to confirm, and then we'll proceed in that manner.
All right.
Thank you.
We can proceed then with the next discussion item, Policy 528.1, Staff and Student Relations, and Wisconsin Act 89.
So that is exactly what I was talking about. Our policy quarterly meetings allows us to attend to things that might come up during the year. So Wisconsin Act 89 was passed this year, and it requires the board to come up with and have policy in place by September of 2026. So we've got a lot of kind of runway in front of us. What I did want to share is this is a draft reminder that we use WASB, Wisconsin Association of School Boards Policy Services, and they've come up with draft language that attends to all the components that are required in the policy. However, I wanted to just let you know that they are coming up with a leaner version of this policy, but they didn't expect that draft to be done until at the end of this week. So I thought we could kind of acclimate ourselves with the larger, more robust language, see if there were any concerns, and then when we get that new leaner policy, then we'd be in a position to compare or see. Generally, we err on the side of less language is more on the policy side so that we can be responsive, but I thought I'd at least start the conversation tonight if there's any areas you want us to dig into. But again, I would recommend we don't move on this one till we see that other language for comparisons.
And you'd said earlier, the statutory deadline for this is?
September.
September, okay. And not that we wait until the last minute prior to that. I mean, I think it makes sense if we want to generally review this, but if we have another option, I think it would be good for us to look at both and see if either fits better, or if we obviously have the opportunity to amend it as we would need to, so. Other thoughts? Or looks like we have time on this. We would just need to be sure that we would meet as a policy committee to advance it to the board in plenty of time.
And certainly what we could do, if there's no concerns in the interim, you can bring both for, you can bring that for our first reading. We haven't seen the language to know, like, do we like the way they tighten it up? Do we even recommend it as administration? I don't know. They just said that knowing that we were kind of waiting for it, they would alert us when it was complete. They didn't anticipate it complete until the end of this week.
So this is, the draft that we have it's fairly long.
It is.
And would you mind maybe, in case anyone is listening to this,
Right, so.
generally what this addresses?
Yep, this is around specifically staff communications with students, and it's really tightening. I think it's a response to a lot of things in the news around different organizations, different offenses that have occurred with adults and children, and just putting in some protections around that communication in school organizations. So it's, like I said, I think there's a lot of news items that really made this a topic of discussion, and how we could shore up, and they're driving that at the state statute level through that act, and then we respond in local policy. So there'll be some bare bones of things that we must include in here. But again, it's really going through those pieces of what is acceptable communication with children, with minors.
And I'm going off memory, which is always dangerous, but I thought we had some flavors of this already in policy, so we would just need to be sure this doesn't conflict, whatever.
So you'll have another in 500 series, so then we'll do the intersection if that one is global and it intersects. There's also pieces in handbook, so we'll look at, how would this impact having to update handbook language, those pieces. So we would cross-reference at that same time. So again, I'm waiting for exactly how we want to refine this, and then we would do that test. But the staff policies are the 500 series, so that's why this one is a 500 label. So then we'd find that intersection, remove any duplication or competing information, center it into this policy, and then reference it as well in their handbooks. And then we're still waiting. I think they're working hand in hand with Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction to put together a required training for all staff that they would go through at the beginning of the year to make sure everyone's fully aware and understanding the implications of, again, that Act 89.
So next steps would be, we have some time to reflect on this policy. You'll provide the shorter policy, and then we can convene again as a policy committee.
And then again, once we have that language, we'll bring the whole thing, any intersections, any recommendations, if we want this from that one and this from this one, that kind of stuff. We'll bring it together as one package for you.
So for committee members, any other suggestions? Are we okay with that course of action?
Yeah, any first glance as you looked at it? Anything sticking out?
Joe?
I mean, a lot of this is pretty common sense. Obviously, there are instances where
Yep.
people don't always follow common sense, but it's basically being respectful of students and not, communicating inappropriately with them, and so, obviously we'll wait for the shorter version, but I think in general, the policy makes sense.
Yeah, the bones are there for that. Again, we would just check that intersection, and then for us, it's really how we adapt our training module for when staff return, so that we're making sure that there's clarity there. Great.
Any other thoughts?
I was going to say, I'm just surprised it's not even more legally verbose, so I look forward to seeing
Yeah,
an even shorter
how they're gonna
shorter
tighten
version.
it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't quite know, but
Yeah.
that's why I said, I'm like, well, so we can, and what I'll do is I'll send this to other board members in the interim too, just so that we've got their perspective going in when we meet again, and bring that.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea to have our fellow board members give them a little bit of a head start.
Yep. Great.
All right, we'll proceed on that basis. Then, let's see, then we're on to the next item, the review of
Next.
300.
The next is the large bucket of the 300 series. And again, we broke those down into chunks. And then if you look at the attachments, if you're following, if you wanted to start with policies to consider for removal, it'll walk you through each one. I also put kind of the Cliff Notes version next to each link to the current policy and why I'm recommending that. So in 311, the performance objectives, those are nested in our online employee evaluation system, and that is where they sit in greater detail as an expectation for our staff. So that is why, kind of looking at that removal, I feel like there's probably some language in the handbook. It's, you know, it's asking people to help kids learn and to assess them. We have assessment policies. We have other places where these tenets show up. So we were comfortable with removal.
Any thoughts, objections? Hearing none?
Okay. The next is just an AR. I have to give notice to the board. The policy was done, but we just found it in some old files. So I just will formally be removing this. There is no policy that goes with this.
This is an
I'm
AR, that's
notifying
right.
you.
It's an orphaned
It's an
AR.
AR, yep. We can move
Okay.
on those. I just need to notify the board.
Okay. Any questions, objections? Hearing
Same
none.
thing with the next one, which is an AR around district wellness. That policy was removed. This was just sitting in kind of old computer files, so I want to formally remove that.
Okay. Any objections? Seeing none.
Charter school establishment, this is not a required policy, and it is really driven by different statutory rules, regulations, and the Department of Public Instruction. So I don't recommend that we have one that could be in competition with what the actual process is. But if you want something that says on the books we wouldn't engage in that without board approval, I would just tighten that up. Because again, it's not required. And again, these deadlines could change, all of those. It just seems like I might be at risk of putting competing instructions out there. The only thing is, if you want to put in something that a charter can only be established with board authority, so that I'm not running off creating my own charter school, and I'm, you know, that we're going to follow rules, regulations, and that it can only be authorized by the board, which is one of their requirements as well, it just doesn't seem necessary to me.
So if it duplicates statutes, I would agree, because otherwise you run the risk of one falls out of sync with the other. The idea of the board authorizing, or it needs to receive board approval to proceed, is that in statutes already?
That was in all the current requirements for DPI, that your board has to authorize it. You have to be authorized, you become an instrumentality of a board or another organization. So that is required to even start. So you have to be an instrumentality one way or the other. So you can be an instrumentality of your own school district, or there's certain organizations that are authorized charters, UW-Milwaukee, a couple of those, they have to go through, you have to have those checks and balances.
And those would be authorized by statute, those organizations.
Correct?
Would seem to be duplication. Okay, any objections to removal? And this would go to the full board
Yeah,
for
correct.
further examination?
Yep,
Okay.
I would take it there. The next one is around instructional planning. Again, this is talking about how we lesson plan, and those tenets are in the evaluation system. It seems like competing information, and we shouldn't put that in front of our staff. They should go to that one tool that goes in way more depth around the expectations around instructional planning.
Any objections to removal? All right, we'll proceed on that basis.
Then the next chunk, if you wanted to just kind of follow along instead of having to go on those links, are policies, format, naming conventions, general updates. That is those. Again, I've made you the Cliff Notes version right next to it. Recall that we are, as we kind of touch these policies, we're standardizing all of those pieces, so you can see we're not changing any intent. I've made note, and then you can see that in the text that we're going through, updating titles, fonts, a lot of lists and spacing, and is this alpha, does it go into numerical, all of those kinds of things, and certain references. Are there any questions on any of those?
Looks like all formatting updates.
Correct, no content changes there.
All right. We hear no questions.
Okay, here's the meat of your discussion today. The next are discussion for revision. So if you want to look at that bucket that says policies recommended for revision as the attachment, we'll go through those pieces. And again, you'll see that in the standard mock-up format where you can see in green what we've added, and in red what we're considering striking. And that very first one is policy 335, intellectual property rights and ownership of curriculum and other works and materials. So we had a large majority of the language. We didn't have copyright nested as a heading. It feels like a formatting issue. But you can see that there's updated language around patents. The WASB recommend no longer contains any of those sub-bullets. They just leave it at that top part. And then there's a reference to school board that we've changed. So again, we'd make that recommendation to fall in line with WASB's recommend to remove that detail unless you.
I don't know if this is the right spot,
Yeah.
but is there a section, or would this be it, regarding artificial intelligence, use of that, and,
That would be a that's
Separate
coming
thing.
as well. They're working on
Okay.
those at the state level, so that'll
Okay.
come to you.
I just think intellectual property, and that can be where you get into the gray lines of that.
Yep,
and
but
so-
we are working, Tim is connected at the state level on very specific around AI and that
Yep.
shifting landscape of technology.
Great.
So I think the intent of this is, and you see this in private industry as well, that if you have an employee, they're working for you, they create something that either the patent or the copyright belongs in the private world to the employer. What this is saying is it's determined according to applicable law, which is the standard. And so we just take out those other bullet points because we're just saying it's determined by applicable law. I don't have a problem with that. Other questions, thoughts? I do like Mr. Jenkins' point around AI. I'll be eager to see what comes in the future with that, policy-wise.
And what we could do is, when we get into that, we could do a cross-reference and update the cross-reference in here if people are thinking that, kind of coming here first. So we can move forward on this, but then we can kind of monitor for a cross-reference update.
Concerns? Okay? All right, let's proceed.
Okay. In that next one is 353.1 volunteers, a couple references, but then WASB had an update, which is largely the last two paragraphs at the end.
That's right. And this is WASB suggested language?
This is their updated language.
So really, it's a liability disclaimer
Yes.
to put individuals on notice. I mean, I think that makes sense. Yeah. Any questions? All right, hearing none. I'm going to run this so it's ready.
The next one is the accompanying AR. And again, that is WASB's update number 7. So we hold all that language currently. Number 7 was added. And 7C, individuals authorized in writing by the district to transport students in private vehicles. When there was a driver shortage, we had parents starting to help out with teams and moving those teams to their competitions, that kind of thing. So that has occurred.
Certainly don't have problems with any of these. I'm just curious, is this largely present practice?
It's largely present practice. Anytime people are alone with kids, if, on that field trip, et cetera, they have to be cleared through volunteer checks.
Background checks.
So,
Questions, committee members? I think this is a decent add. Sounds like it reflects present practice. All right. All right, on to the next.
that next one, 363.3, assistive technology planning for students with special needs, capitalized, and it's a full revision. This is all new language from WASB that we reviewed. So this updates. I think this language is more flexible to the ever-changing world of technology.
Yeah, it's interesting, the pre-existing language talks about access to the World Wide Web, which is
Yeah.
descriptive, but
Yeah.
kind of dates the policy a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I would say on first read, I'm fine with this. We'll have an opportunity for the board
Yeah.
to take
I
a
would
deeper, to
recommend
take an even
taking it
deeper
forward.
look. Any objections to moving this forward for full board consideration? I don't want to cut this short. There's a number of changes here.
Good.
You okay? We're good.
370, co-curricular activities, capitalizing the title, a reference, and updated the last paragraph, which is the accurate discrimination statement.
That was 370, you said, right?
370,
Okay.
co-curricular activities, and it's bringing alignment to that non-discrimination statement.
Questions?
So just to, face an issue or the bull by the horn, so to speak. So regardless of your opinion on it, but if we have, trans students who are trying to, participate in sports and all that, do you feel like the district is covered by that last paragraph, regardless of whatever that decision might be by the district?
So when you talk about athletics, those are different policies
Okay.
and different governing rules by different bodies that actually direct us.
Okay, because
So
it does
WI, et
represent,
cetera.
yeah,
Yep,
interscholastic athletics for males and females and all that, so.
Yep,
okay.
so, when you're thinking about extracurricular, we're largely looking at clubs and those things. So those other organizations may have additional layers
Okay.
of direction.
I'm
But
just making
yes,
sure
I
that our
feel-
butts are covered.
Yes, I feel
Yeah.
like we are fully covered in this.
And just looking at this language, this seems to be what you see in court cases around the expansiveness. It's using the correct words, at least
Correct.
according to
This
statutory and case law.
This is our current statement, so
Yeah.
I'm making sure that all the policies that use it are accurate.
Other questions? Okay, moving this forward for board consideration. All right.
371.1 is school recognized clubs. This did not exist before in consultation. Lenny and Ralph have their hand quite a bit in some clubs, co-curriculars, and cleaning up that. We all recommend that we put something in place here. And again, there was no prior policy.
And same thing, you and I have talked about it in the past, if there's clubs regarding, sexual orientation or ethnicity or anything like that, I'm glad to see that we have now a policy that helps to umbrella those things.
Correct.
And is this language that WASB supplied, we put it together?
WASB supplied
WASB
this.
supplied it, okay.
This is their recommended language.
Okay. Questions, concerns? All right, hearing none, we'll move to the board for consideration.
Okay.
Next is,
374, student fundraising. We're seeking a full revision. WASB's provided updates, and you can see that represented in the green language. And then I had Lenny look at it from the business office perspective to ensure that it met their needs as well as our expectations for kids.
committee members, any questions, concerns? All right.
And that last one is just significantly out of date. So picking up the language in green is supplied by WASB on the topic of interscholastic athletics.
Let's see, that's 377, right?
Correct, 377, that final one in that kind of chunk to really look at for revisions.
Committee members, any questions, concerns? All right, so it sounds like all these will be advanced to the board for additional consideration.
Yep, if you're comfortable with that, then that's the route we will go.
All right. So those are the ones for revision, and
So
then,
we did a lot of work.
yeah, I
But
see.
you'll see there's some that are still left. And those we are moving, I've been working with a couple social studies teachers to talk with students around their engagement. There are things like their graduation requirements, et cetera, where we wanted to solicit student voice. And then there'll be a cross-team from the district, such as counselors, administrators, staff, et cetera. And that will go through the curriculum committee first because of the content in those, so.
So I need to thank our friends on the curriculum committee, because I think we're going to give them about 30 policies to take a look at.
They saw all of these first, so they had the opportunity to weigh in first. So they're going to be nothing but appreciative that we did the lift on
Okay.
many of them. So we helped lighten their load.
They haven't had enough to do lately. so-
Exactly.
goodness.
So we'll be kind of moving through those, and as soon as they bring those, then we can convene, look at that language, and move it forward.
I mean, I recall we've seen some of these in the past.
You
and-
have.
And so it's not like any of these are, so to speak, from the ground up, but they should just be standardized and coordinated.
And they're largely up to date, but there might have some nuance. And again, we wanted to solicit, those pieces and advances in the field. Like, okay, if this is what, youth apprenticeship looks like and kids can take these classes here, like our policies all lined up with kind of how instruction's evolved. So we just wanted to double check that with a wider audience.
Any questions on the 300 series so far? All right, and although it's not technically on our agenda, so we shouldn't talk about, just in general, there will be some on the board agenda tonight, correct?
Correct. So we were unable to meet last week, so on tonight's, we'll be talking about the athletic code, the athletic handbook. So they've done substantial work. There's policies that are nested inside of that, and how we execute that is almost how you kind of bring policy to life. So they'll go through a little bit of what their process was to engage people, and then they'll recommend some updates there. So that's the athletic, as well as facilities. We've seen the facilities use multiple times, and we went back, the last directive from the group was try and carve out one more layer of that was student or youth focused, to try and reduce fees. So Tim's got that to bring forward, that reduction. And then we've talked about transportation eligibility here in the past. And then we've just got some metrics around aligning that. Right now, we're splitting our families. Remember, we'll pick up this one, but not that one. And so we talked about alignment before. So we've got some recommends in conjunction with our transportation company. So we'll walk that through with the whole board so that we can hear those first readings. The handbook, the athletic handbook, it's not a policy. When they went through it, they were in alignment with the policies as presented. So that can be a discussion and a future action if the full board's comfortable. The others will go through their policy series of readings, so everyone will have input there.
Well, certainly all policies are important. Those, I think, maybe have even greater public interest, so having that at the board makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, anything else for this committee meeting?
That was all.
All right. Committee members, we've reached the end of the agenda. Any objections to adjourning? All right. We will consider ourselves adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll see you shortly for the board meeting.